Will these 17 countries collapse in 2024? Many developing nations are currently facing significant economic challenges, evident through various indicators such as crashing currencies, high bond spreads of 1,000 basis points, and depleted foreign exchange reserves. The collective scale of this issue is staggering, with an estimated $400 billion of debt considered at risk when using a benchmark of 1,000 basis point bond spreads as a threshold for concern. Number 1. Argentina. Argentina's economic alarm bells are ringing loudly, with fears of global recession and spiraling inflation stoking investor fears over possible defaults, missed targets with the International Monetary Fund (IMF), and political unrest. The South American country, an important global supplier of soybeans, corn, and wheat, has seen its bonds sink to record lows. Pressure on its peso currency is rising, and a high energy import bill is stopping it from building up vital dollar reserves. The recent volatility has been exacerbated by wider emerging market jitters as the U.S. Federal Reserve has tightened monetary policy and soaring global prices, including high energy costs that have badly hit Argentina's balance of payments, limiting its ability to build up much-needed foreign reserves. Number 2. Afghanistan. With the withdrawal of the U.S. forces from Afghanistan, acute malnutrition has been ruling over the country, causing food shortages and threatening food security. A report by Human Rights Watch stated that at least 55% of the population is expected to be in crisis or emergency levels of food insecurity through March 2022, according to the United Nations. Over time, multiple humanitarian organizations have issued warnings about the sheer scale of the crisis, and its impact worsens with many Afghan children starving to death every day. Number 3. Venezuela. 1 out of every 3 Venezuelans is food insecure and in need of urgent food supplies, according to the World Food Program (WFP). Further, the COVID-19-induced pandemic has worsened the country's humanitarian and economic crisis further. A consistent shortage of fuel, electricity, and clean water has sparked several riots over the years, leaving hundreds of migrants with no choice but to flee again. Number 4. Middle East. The situation in the Middle East has deteriorated significantly in more countries and in more ways in the last 2 years, reports AP. Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Libya, and Yemen are teetering on the brink of humanitarian catastrophe, with skyrocketing poverty and an economic implosion that threatens to throw the region into even deeper turmoil. Number 5. Russia. Moscow's war on Ukraine and the ferocious financial backlash it's unleashed are not only inflicting an economic catastrophe on President Vladimir Putin's Russia. The repercussions are also menacing the global economy, shaking financial markets and making life more perilous for everyone, from Uzbek migrant workers to European consumers to hungry Yemeni families. For the European continent, Russia's war has significantly heightened the likelihood of runaway inflation, another economic setback, or both. Number 6. Sudan. 4 months after a military coup plunged the African nation into further turmoil, cash-strapped Sudan, early in March, announced it will float the country's currency as economic conditions deteriorate further. The Central Bank of Sudan said banks and exchange firms will determine the value of the Sudanese pound based on supply and demand. The central bank governor Yahi Hussein Gankwal said there will be no interference from the central bank. Number 7. Ukraine. The world's leading economies are sliding into recession as the global energy and inflation crisis sparked by Russia's invasion of Ukraine cut growth by more than previously forecast, according to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development (OECD). A dependency on expensive gas for heavy industry and home heating will plunge Germany, Italy, and the UK into a long period of recession after global growth was projected by the OECD to slow to 2.2% in 2023 from a forecast in June of 2.8%. Number 8. Tunisia. The Tunisian economy has gone from bad to worse in recent years, battered by a series of challenges from heavy indebtedness to diminished output. While the economy has struggled since the Arab Spring uprising of 2011, its problems have been greatly exacerbated by the pandemic and President Kais Saied's power grab and the undoing of state institutions. Unemployment has soared to nearly 18.5% as of the third quarter of 2021, and disruptions in global markets and Russia's recent invasion of Ukraine have further strained the already hard-hit economy. Number 9. Ghana. Ghana's economic woes continue as the country seeks International Monetary Fund (IMF) support for the 17th time. The bailout was necessary after the newly electronic transaction levy E-levy, a 1.5% tax on all electronic transfers above GHS 100, failed to yield the expected results. Petrol and diesel prices have jumped by 88.6% and 128.6% respectively. Most public transport fares have increased by over 100% since January. Number 10. Egypt. Egypt's economic crisis has been caused by several global shocks. Rising commodity prices, including wheat and sunflower, main staples in Egypt, have contributed to the red-hot inflation. Additionally, the CBE's decision to adopt a flexible exchange rate caused the Egyptian pound to sharply depreciate, which increased import costs, reduced its foreign exchange reserves, and widened the budget deficit. On the brink of Egypt's economic collapse, the country reached out to the IMF for aid. On 27 October, the IMF announced it agreed to provide a $3 billion Extended Fund Facility (EFF) arrangement. Number 11. Kenya. In Kenya, reduced spending by consumers as a result of high cost of living and reduced cash flow is beginning to have a negative impact on growth. Low demand has forced several businesses to apply the brakes on hiring as they contend with sluggish consumer spending, higher interest rates, and the impact of a strong dollar. Number 12. Ethiopia. Ethiopia's external sector has been severely affected by the global economic crisis, with a decline in the growth of exports, imports, private transfers, and foreign direct investment (FDI). Surprisingly, however, Ethiopia's economic growth seems to have been largely unaffected by the crisis due to high levels of growth of exports, remittances, and private capital flows. The timely response by donors significantly increased external aid and thereby providing breathing space for policymakers to decide on the appropriate course of action. Number 13. El Salvador. El Salvador's GDP will only grow by 2.6% this year, after reporting a notorious 10.3% in 2021. And even the credit agency places it below the 2.8% forecast by the Central Reserve Bank, BCR. Despite the efforts by President Nayib Bukele's government to show a more encouraging outlook, a deep recession in the United States will have effects on El Salvador's economy, which is already facing a slowdown in its activity, as shown by BCR statistics. Number 14. Pakistan. Pakistan has been put in a very bad position as they fear which country will declare recession and when. Pakistan's Consumer Inflation Index rose unexpectedly to 24.5% in December from 12.28% in the same period last year. In the announcement made by the Pakistan Statistics Organization, Pakistan's inflation doubled in December. Pakistan's economic and financial situation has not only deteriorated in the last 2 years, but the country is running out of money, even for its basic needs. While IMF, China, and Saudi Arabia have given huge loans, but with the aid of funding, the floods in Pakistan caused huge losses to the country. Thus, all the mobilized financial support was lost. Number 15. Belarus. The stability of the Belarusian economy has come under threat from the new Western sanctions imposed on the country in 2022 for its complicity in the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the loss of the Ukrainian market. Most pessimistic forecasts tell that the country will probably face a deep economic recession, involving a decline in its GDP. Number 16. Ecuador. Ecuador's central bank cut the Andean country's economic growth forecast for the year to 2.6% from 3.1%, citing the impact of reduced oil exports, and said economic growth in 2022 was 2.9%. That brings us to the end of our video. Let us know your views in the comment section, and don't forget to show your support by engaging with this video and sharing it with others. For more such content, do subscribe to our channel.